the number of hands that went up were very less. Where do you think we as journalists are going wrong? I can start with Professor Farhad. Where do you think today's journalism is going? Why are people not trusting it? What's happening?
Hello. Uh, the thing is that this is not a secret that if you look at the trust barometer reports, at a lot of places, not in India alone, the trust in the media is reducing, and there are several reasons. But here we are not, we should be looking at solutions. I think what media is doing is that in pursuit of building a brand and brand has a USP, and because of that brand and USP, they are, they have very strong, I can say, editorial policy. There are, so divergent of views is something we are yet to see, which was earlier a very important area of journalism. The second thing, where we can win trust is to inform marginalized community, people who don't access to so much information and little something we need to do. That's another part. I'm not touching on the political part, but I'm touching on the all social responsibilities which all channel should have to win back that trust. There are maybe when I'll get a second chance, I'll elaborate on more points. But for now, I think I shouldn't be taking more time.
Thank you so much, Professor Farhad. Johita, would you like to add something on why do you think people are losing trust on journalists?
I don't think our readers are losing trust by newspaper, so I disagree with that. But yes, what is happening is, you see, there is some kind of a deep divide that has come into, I would say, the media space. Now, when that deep divide is coming in, certain things, the problem starts when the headlines start getting written first, and you then fit in, tweak content to kind of fit your headline. That becomes a problem. And, when that is exposed, it is bound to cause some kind of an erosion of trust. No, but at the same time, now when there is this deep divide, you have to decide. I agree that you have to take actually a moderate path. You just cannot be too left or too right. And when you are talking about this loss of trust, I would like to believe that, it's in these extreme positions that the loss of trust is happening, especially when you are looking at Indian journalism. I don't want to talk about, what we are seeing internationally, because frankly, we saw, in fact, right now we are witnessing what is happening when in terms of, say, the distrust that the Indians have in general towards, I would say, Western legacy media, the kind of stuff that is being written about India, and a lot of things are being said about India and the government, a whole lot of things, the whole Canada fiasco that is going on. So yes, it's a fact, we journalists are also very skeptical of what the Western media talks about Indian media or Indians in general. But at the same time, you see, the minute we say that we don't trust the media, then who do you trust? Do you trust your WhatsApp forwards? Do you trust WhatsApp University? There is a lot of misinformation there, a lot of disinformation there. But even then, maybe one person has told you about it, there's a lack of trust. When you go to the people in general, they are all turning to credible news sources to get their information. Okay, so I'm not willing to say that there is a lack of trust in the media.
Right, Joyita, I would like to add there, you mentioned about the Western culture also, right? Do you,
Western media. The Western coverage.
Do you think in a race to match up with that coverage, the Indian media might be losing out on fact-checking, information? Do you think there is that aspect there?
It will depend on, how many of your stories that you publish, how many of your reports that you have kind of shown on television, your news reports, how many of them have proven to be wrong. Once I get the statistics in front of me, the data, only then I will say, yes, okay, these are the, all mainstream media, the whole of mainstream media is going wrong. And maybe the fringe media, what we talk about, the extreme left and the extreme right, they are, so what happens, a lot of this misinformation and disinformation is coming from the fringe. So I think we need to make a distinction over there. What serious journalism is about, I don't see there is a lack of trust in that. But yes, whatever the fringe is reporting, there is a problem there.
Right. Roshan, I would like to come to you. Where do you think, how can journalists strike a balance, or media houses strike a balance between reporting authentic news and being, still remaining objective, maintaining the objectivity, not being influenced by factors that they might have a personal thing for? How do you think they can strike a balance?
To answer your question and to coming back to the larger question of trust, I don't think the crisis which the media today is facing is one of trust. I think what we have is two sets of people by and large who disagree with one section of media because what that section is saying, they actually don't like it. And I don't think this is a problem to the Indian media or even I would say our country per se. I mean, look at the United States, for example. There, it is becoming increasingly rare that two people, if one is a Democrat and one is a Republican, would ever even get in a relationship today. Whether or not you decide to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine depends on what your political view is. You had an incumbent president alleging that an election had been stealed, and no matter what mainstream media was saying, Mr. Trump still managed to get 50% of the vote. So I think what we have is the fact that our society today is extremely polarized, and it is natural for people to look at the media and find a reflection of their own view. So that is where I think this problem arises. And no matter what you say, no newspaper, or mainstream television channel, says stuff like Jawaharlal Nehru was a Muslim, or something else has happened, or this has happened. But people have those belief systems. So I think it is slightly, I would say, unrealistic for the media to expect that it can completely change the society's psyche in a way. You have to live with the times in which you are living in, and our political space is very polarized today. What media can do, and I think the bigger crisis for the media is one of relevance rather than trust. Because in a day and age when WhatsApp and Twitter and everything else and Instagram is happening, how do you stay relevant to the audience, or, to use a business language, the consumer base you're serving? I think that is perhaps a bigger challenge, and going forward, I think increasingly become an even bigger challenge as to how do you stay relevant. And that, I think, is the larger question which we need to address. We can perhaps come back to it in the course of the discussion, but that is what I want to say.
Thank you so much, Roshan. Mr. Khan, would you like to answer the very same question? How do you think media can stay relevant today?
Well, I would like to start with with an observation of a Canadian cognitive psychologist called Steven Pinker. He was quoting a research, and he said that we are living in a world where people are, behaving well with each other, like never before. They are cooperating with each other, and they are kindly with each other. But why is it that it is not reflecting in the real world? That reflection is not seen. So his assessment is maybe it is something to do with the consumption or access of news media of people. You see, when you were talking about the gentleman you met, and he said that he does not trust media, perhaps, he was looking at media collectively. Now, today, media is a package. It cannot be like a print or a TV or a social media or a digital media. People look, an outsider looks at media as a package of all. And there's a lot of interplay between all these media platforms, So what is happening is we are picking up content from social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we are processing it. We are putting it in some sort of analysis into it and presenting. And, from television, it is going on social media, from print. So there's a lot of interplay which is happening. So we'll have to address this so-called distrust or, with the, in totality, as a package. We'll have to look at it. My assessment is that, we'll have to do, we have to continue to do our duty, which is of a watchdog, as Honorable Governor of Kerala was saying, that we are the watchdogs, and that's a prime duty. And we must continue to ensure that we are doing that. We are, attracting, we are helping people make informed decisions, and we help, the institutions to make course corrections. You see, worldwide, it's a phenomenon now. It's not just, media is not an exception. You'll see it, the global institutions are being criticized. You see, every industry, there's a lot of churning happening worldwide. Within India also, we see our institutions with critical eye. So I think this is all good, because, as Nicholas Taleb quotes, and he says, disruptors in any system are good. They help improve your system. So I think we are going through very interesting times where every other person on the street identifies himself as a journalist. He's empowered, he's a camera, he's living in a digital age. He wants to revolutionize things, he wants to make a change. But in the process, when there's a lot of interplay which is happening between all these mediums, we have to be careful, as Joyita was pointing out, of misinformation and disinformation. And, when it comes to institutions, we are the fourth pillar. Other institutions may in some degree, deteriorate. But if the media, the trust in media, goes away, it's a very, very dangerous situation. So we will have to address this. And I'll tell you my experience of what we have been doing. A bunch of friends, we journalists, we got together during COVID pandemic, and we thought, what do we do? What should be a course in future journalism? Should we be doing what others are doing? That was the time, I remember, when there was a lot of gloom and doom all over. So we thought, why not do something more, let's do something creative. So we started a platform called Awaz the Voice. It puts out feel-good stories of inclusivity, pluralism, syncretism, interfaith harmony, stories of success of people throughout India. And we have had an amazing response. So that goes on to show there's a lot of craving for this kind of journalism, which we have. You see, our responsibility is not just to the polity, our responsibility is to the society. So we tend at times to, and we are not to be blamed for this. We are living in a system of, in an ecosystem which is full of negativity, and we are part and parcel of that. So I think we need to broaden, we should not be looking everything with political lenses, which we as, I frankly agree, some of our journalists, subconsciously they have started doing when you see things around them. So what happens is when Mr. Mahesh Sharma or say Sultan Khan, we are giving them content which enforces their views. So they love it, they like that content. But same Mr. Mahesh Sharma and Sultan Khan, at the end of the day, when they look around and see, look, oh, I have a problem. My father needs to be hospitalized for his old age treatment. Who will solve this parking problem? And it is then when they get together, they discuss, oh, media is, they're doing good for nothing. They don't do anything. They're just pitching one person against another. So that is the perception which needs to be changed. We have to get out of the system of, this ecosystem of negativity. And no one individual journalist is responsible for it. It's the entire system. We have the greatest, we have some very good minds in this industry, as good as any other industry in the world. So that, the broad basing of your content, getting involved in, subjects which to us are not important because we are in this, we are looking at everything with a political prism, but we should also understand that we are a country which is the largest population in next, by 2050, we are bound to become a superpower irrespective of which government is there in power. So we have to prepare for that. And we as journalists, it's our duty to prepare people for that, look into, areas which are not being explored, geriatrics, parenting, water scarcity, food security. These are the things we will have to, expand into so that we win people's trust and confidence.
Thank you so much. Some very important points made there. But two key things that you mentioned was the first very important thing, and I think we have a lot of students who might have studied the same as media, is the watchdog. And another important point that has been mentioned in the morning, again on this panel, is misinformation. I'd come to Professor Farhat. What happens when the watchdog starts spreading misinformation, because it is seeing a rise? How do media organizations curb the spread of misinformation?
No, first, we have to look at the genesis, why it happens. Probably the funding model has a problem which runs on advertisement, and that runs on public opinion, TRPs, and so there is a whole problem of, you need to, sometimes they act like echo chamber of certain groups so that they can get more TRP, more people. Sometimes they would not expose something which is probably owned by someone who's running the cross media ownership, and a lot of those systemic problems are there. But what we need to look at and how we can do is, number one, that fact checking need to be very, very strong. And if is all channel as a policy adopt that, I think their trust would come back, in the sense that those propaganda and those lies which are spread like opinions would stop. The second thing which is getting back the trust would be that we involve people, we involve people from different strata into newsrooms so that we can get divergent views, as Sukumar, in the second speech was mentioning, that there is no much diversity of voices in newsroom. And the third thing which comes to my mind is, after fact checking, is that we need to a source of very trusted information, and that would only happen when people would start believing in you. And how people would start believing in you, that you have to start with giving them, something which is more relevant to, in the sense that building nation, science, public good, and probably less of political stuff initially to start with, till we are, we can repair the system and make it more accountable. The other two things which is probably look very different from each other, so they look like a paradox, but this paradox would work. Number one is expression, the freedom of expression. So any reporter who want to cover anything should be allowed to that freedom. And the second part of that paradox is that it should be a huge accountability if something doesn't go well. So both accountability, which would of course stifle freedom of expression, and freedom of expression both be given in a newsroom.
Thank you so much, Professor Farhat. Johita, I would like to come to you. How do you think the rise of social media and citizen journalism has affected the traditional journalistic practices? And does that have anything to do with the lack of trust or maybe confidence?
Yeah, you see, when you're talking about lack of trust, I'm first going to tackle that, what we were discussing earlier as well. Now, you see, there is a line between interpretation and misinformation. There's a line between interpretation, how you interpret a news, how you interpret maybe a set of data that comes to you, whatever. There is a difference between that and how you manipulate that and you basically that amounts to disinformation, and you are going into the misinformation territory. I don't think that news outlets, mainstream papers and all, so I don't think that kind of maybe interpretation happens. But if you're asking about disinformation, basically outright lying, I don't think any media organization worth any name will do that. They don't do that. So you may not like a particular way of presenting news, you may not like a particular angle a newspaper or a magazine takes, but to say that it's outright lie, that I am still very optimistic about Indian media in general. So I don't believe that happens. So when you're talking about social media journalists, and this is and because of it's the age of social media and WhatsApp and all, now there is a possibility that yes, that media can kind of interpret things differently and actively become tools of certain agendas, of certain ideologies, and I'm saying it could be from any side. All right, and what happens after that is that once that is pursued, a certain narrative is built, but you see, that is not credible. That is not always credible, and so I'm still very skeptical about when you're talking about these social media journalists and all, because you don't know what has happened, what information has been cut out, and whose agenda they're serving. So I'm very skeptical. The citizen journalists and all, beyond a point, once you start scratching the surface, you realize that something or the other is coming out. So that is why I say, earlier also I said, when it comes to people who want actual information, they would rather turn to actual journalism, actual media reports. They will seek validation from there, whether it has actually happened or not, than trusting, because ultimately social media journalism is equal to WhatsApp forwards. You don't know whether there is any credibility in that or not.
Thank you so much, Joyita. Very, very well said. Roshan, I'd come to you. Speaking of, we are in a digital era. There's a lot of emerging technology. News houses are adopting technology as AI anchors and everything. But how do you think these very technologies, say AI or blockchain, can enhance, say, trust and confidence amongst the, the people consuming news?
It is human to think that, the times we are living in are transformative times, and like our generation of journalists will think that social media or AI or blockchain are perhaps the biggest disruptions to ever happen to journalism. I think it is important to realize that, technological innovations will keep happening and existing models of work, journalism or otherwise, will keep getting disrupted. The question of trust and other things, I think we have to accept the fact, when the Bengal famine happened in this country, there was no reporting of the Bengal famine in British papers, because the British government was worried that it will undermine the war effort, because the government was basically confiscating a lot of grain for the war effort during the Second World War. Until the then statesman editor actually decided to break this embargo, nobody knew. This is like Jurassic Age as far as social media is concerned. You had in the United States something like McCarthyism, where a certain gentleman who decided that anybody and everybody who was even suspected of being a communist was pretty much hounded out. Not just media, film industry, universities, everything. So these kind of things will keep happening. And I think the larger question which we need to ask is two things. One is from the supply side of the industry. If people who are deciding what goes in media, TV, print, whatever it is, and there are people who own that business and there are people who run that business. If there is a widespread consensus that we will not breach a certain red line, either way, it could be against the government or for the government. It is the given ideological bias of the day. You will not have objective news. I think this is still a better world to live in, a world of complete regulation of media by the state. Because media can have its problem, but I would still think that, you can have a debate whether you should have absolute freedom of expression, like Sir said, which is the case in the United States, or not, which is the case as far as our country is concerned. But I think we are still better off in a slightly deregulated media environment. The second thing, and which makes me come back to the question of relevance is, I come from the state of Bihar. Back home in my village, the joke used to be that so-and-so has absolutely no work in the day, and he ends up reading even advertisements in newspapers. And the idea was that he had absolutely no way to pass his time. today, and I think it is more the age of handheld internet devices rather than the internet or social media per se, you have actually, you're spoiled for choice as to how you want to spend your time. You can decide to do Instagram or YouTube or OTT, or you can decide to read a website or something. I think, media, at one point of time, you could either tune into the radio news or you could read newspapers. We do not have that monopoly, as far as, the concentration span of the audience is concerned. That is where the bigger crisis of relevance comes. Now, whether you do AI, if somebody can use AI to build, say, a very beautiful interactive thing, and whereas, you keep engaging with it, I think it would serve media very well. Now, you could use AI to produce deepfake videos. Say the video of a prime minister or a very senior political functionary is circulated, which can go viral with within no time. So I think rather than technology per se, we have to deal with these larger problems. As to what the relationship of the media industry to the regime is, the wider political order is, and as to how you deal with the reader as far as their engagement time is concerned. I mean, unless we can deal with these two structural questions, I think our problems will continue to haunt us.
Thank you so much, Roshan. Again, very well said. Before we open up to the audience, I have a question for Mr. Khan. How do you think, the journalism education programs need to adapt themselves to the changing media landscape and ensure that we have students here who are studying journalism, ensure that these very journalists, the aspiring journalists, can maintain integrity when they step into the industry? How do you think the journalism programs can help?
The thing is that the journalism probably...
sorry, this was first. I'll come back to you.
Yeah. Faraz Saab can also add his, comments to it. So basically, I'll go back to what I was saying, that, journalism institutes need to be mindful that we have become too political, we're looking at everything from the political lens. So if you look at the politics on a global level, there's the changes happening in many countries, right? It's not just India. Rightist ideology is part and parcel in various countries. So that should not be disturbing us in any way, first of all. But we must learn to see beyond politics, because when we started journalism, we were, we're still lucky to pick up a lot of stories which were related to human interest and, things like that. So what I need to tell the new, generation of journalists is that you don't get carried away by AIs and all. These are very important tools to learn. You must. But, journalism is all about human emotions. It's all about emotions. And no machine in this world can replace human emotions. Joyita and I, we started career even before the advent of Google. And we were experiencing similar, thoughts that now, Google has come. What happens to expertise domain? Now all the experience we had gained, nobody, there's no value for that. But then nothing changes. These are all tools you have to learn. But what you have to learn is that you have to look beyond politics. You have to explore areas which need attention. They're craving for attention. And let me tell you, there's a lot of audience for such issues, people who want to read content on that. Joyita has been putting out a lot of content on Sunday Guardian, which has some very interesting, they cover a lot of very interesting, important issues which need to be addressed. So, like I was saying that, we as journalists, it's our duty to be watchdog, but we have social responsibility. But at the same time, as we grow in next 27 years, all eyes will be on India, on Indian journalism. What is Indian journalism offering people? So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be very judicious in our criticism, both within the country and outside the country. Because if we are, excessively critical of the countries which are outside, there's a backlash which is coming in. And I've been reading some books from authors from, from the West who are already, talking about it. So we have to be mindful, but at the same time, we have to be careful about the disinformation which is being spread. India is going to rise, and nobody can stop it. So we as journalists have a very important and very sensitive role to play.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. Professor Farhat, you were adding something to this question. That's after this. We'll open up to the audience questions. If you have something to add on this.
The generation of teachers actually we had were very good. I'm not so good. My teacher were probably better, but now what we have to look at it is that the time has changed, and the time so the curriculum which the student are learning need to be entirely you have to discard the older one. The entire definitions changed. Fact checking are not part of the is not a paper in a journalism school. So these are few deficiencies which we need to really look at with how time changed, and so that we can teach these students. In my days, we were taught what Mr. Khan was saying, that these were all very relevant things, and you have to be speaking truth to power. You have to be, you have to listen to your own inner voice. You have to be side of the truth. But in a technological, all very good, but doesn't mean that I'm negating any of it. But in a newer ecosystem which is emerging, there are newer tools which are coming. I don't know how many of you have read my book, which is Game of Vote, and it has I'm very fortunate that Purnam Mukherjee wrote the preface to it. And we talk about, in that book, we talk about how Obama actually or any leader, how they planted things which are not real, and how we have to learn these new techniques and the new truth and the newer way of saying things, and how to prevent if somebody is misusing these mechanisms. So this is what I wanted to add, is that we have to, the teacher need to be learn about all this, and then so this saying just that listen to your inner voice, or speak power to the truth, or all these are all valid, but how do you do that in a technological era with newer tools which are there to fool you, to deep fake is actually look fake. Changing context is not even changing anything in the news. If I have some people who are, blue burqa clad in Afghanistan, and I just put it in some other context, say that it is taken in Hyderabad, I'm changing a little. I'm giving you a very a small example. Then everything changes. So so all this is are easy to do, easy to duplicate, easy to manufacture. In this age, how you find truth? If you need to find truth to speak to the power now, and the people are out there are going to give you your own stories. So these are something which in this age the student can devote their time and learn on their own if the syllabi are not doing. I'm one of the founder member of Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia. I built it up from first batch onward. Now I'm at Hamdard and trying to rebuild the entire thing I've disregarded, and we are making a new syllabus looking at all this. So every one of you have to do this, the people who are in journalism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Farhat. I think we have time for one question. Okay, so a gentleman here raised. Can we give a mic to him first?
Okay, I run as online news channel, which we started during COVID. That was targeted, that's a weekly channel, which was targeted at the global Indian diaspora. So that, now straight to the question. Now, I've got two questions in mind. One is what Roshan said about the media dividing the society. Is our media really responsible for that? Because how does society get divided if media doesn't play a role? That is the first question. So anybody can answer. The second is, why are we so scared to ask questions to the politicians who come for 5 years? What is this so magic that we cannot ask questions? They only come for 5 years. Even the chief of army staff comes into power for 2 years, right?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think, Roshan, would you like to take the first question?
I'm sorry, I think you got me wrong. I didn't say the media is dividing the society. I said media is actually a reflection of how divided our society
My
already
question is our media responsible for dividing the society?
I told you, I said media is not responsible. It is the way our media is
But
working.
how does the society get
is
divided
actually-
without
no, you
the
got
media?
to listen to
Sir,
me
just a
first.
second, yeah.
I said the way our media functions is actually a reflection of how divided we are as a society. So media, did not drop from like somewhere else. Media works within the same society which we work in.
I think it's both. We mirror each other. So if the society, if the society is divided, you can see that not even in like earlier days, not one party wins. It's like a lot of parties would come together and then win. So there is a division which you can. It has its own problem. The division has its problem that little issues like Kaveri River would be discussed in parliament because you have regional party to support. So the same thing is happening here in the time is up. So some other time it's very interesting thing. You can meet me and I'll tell you how we change each other and what are the mechanism and what are the ways we do it. So we'll meet one to one.
Whoever
and
has
talk. Thank
questions
you.
can take this with the speakers offline.
Well-
I'm sure they'll be around for a while. You can take this offline.
Ms. Ganguly, I believe we are running at a paucity of time.
Yeah.
But there is one question. Could I please request the gentleman to kindly stand who asked me to ask this question? And I quote, "Sir, in the era of artificial intelligence, why is it difficult to control or remove fake news from different platforms? Is the onus should be on the intermediary platforms or government or the media platforms itself?"
Would anyone like to take that?
I believe the crux would be in what ways and what are the ways that fake news can be removed. That's what you're trying to ask. ये कह रहे हैं कि आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस के इस दौर में why is it difficult to control or remove fake news from different platforms, be it digital media or print media?
What makes you think that artificial intelligence is the be-all and end-all of knowledge? How do you know that artificial intelligence has not been manipulated to reflect certain views? So why are we even thinking in terms of artificial intelligence? I know a lot of things happen nowadays. I know, sub-editors putting their copy through artificial intelligence and all, and what comes, the result is it's a mess, basically. So just trust your fact checkers. Trust the simple things about, making a phone call and finding out, because artificial intelligence, you never know. The certain kind of bias is also coming into, according to what the person who has programmed that bias is also coming in. So, it's very difficult to, let's trust, for example, the human intelligence before we get into the artificial intelligence part.
Sorry, sir, we are running out of time. We can take this offline. Please, sorry.
I'll just sum this up. What probably this he's asking is something different. He's asking, if I'm right, he's asking that like AI is not responsible for deep fake and all, then why can't we have an AI to catch, so it's set a thief to catch a thief, like a situation. Yes, we can program. Yes, we can have an automated conveyor belt kind which we require. Yes, all the I'm advisor to a lot of these channels where we do that conveyor belt kind. So all the social media platform like Facebook and all, they have this kind of a algorithm which picks up which are all doubtful, and then we all sit together and do it. So it's being done. It's on, and all social media platform are actually doing, because they are responsible for what is going on. So rest assured, time would come that it will become easier for user to get it now. Big corporate have it already.
Thank you, Professor Farhad. And with that, we are wrapping the conversation. This was very insightful. Thank you so much to all the